Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave. Before we get started, for a little bit of context of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to play this clip from episode 9 of season 4 from The Bear. Trust me, there's no spoilers involved in this clip. I just kind of want to illustrate a point. So here it is. It's about 15 seconds.
You know, I was just thinking, literally just now, thinking.
What? Tell me.
The businesses in the world that give the most amount of joy, try to anyway, right? Unfortunately, they're all just shitty-ass businesses, right?
Restaurants.
Movies.
The theater. Oof.
When's the last time you saw a play, huh?
Well, to be fair, the last time I saw anything, it looked like the inside of a restaurant.
My point exactly. There's no time for enjoyment.
Something about that really hit me as I was watching this season, which I really love this season. There was a lot of emotional growth in the characters, but that's not what I want to talk about. It's something that Oliver Platt says right there at the end too. There's no time for enjoyment anymore. And last week I talked about that. I talked about enjoying things, trying things, specifically food is one of the things I talked about. But this hit home because it was illustrating something that I hadn't really thought about. And they say, he says that you think about all the businesses that bring people enjoyment and they're all shit businesses. And he didn't mean it like it's a bad business to own, but the business model in 2025 doesn't leave any room for making money or for enjoyment on the other side. Because I want to take movies. We can talk about movies or comics. We can talk about restaurants. I have never really worked in the restaurant industry. I worked in the service industry. I worked in a cafeteria at an amusement park on Long Island. I worked at a Subway restaurant, and that I think was the extent of my food service industry. But hey, I've got like about 2 years of it. But like for example, for movies, we're getting bombarded with movies, starting at the summer movie tentpole thing, right? It used to start, I want to say it started in June, but really kind of crescendoed on July 4th. And now it starts in sometimes in some cases, it's like end of April, but very early May. I remember when X-Men came out and like life was a little bit simpler. We got our trailers and, we went to see the movie. But then these days, because of the internet, obviously, but also because like we're getting so much information about these movies, it almost feels like you already know you want to see the movie and you feel like you've seen it by the time it came out, or you're like, oh, this movie's going to be terrible because there's just like so much coming at you at once. But the movie industry changed so much, and the way they release things and the money they put into marketing and the way they market them. And so a movie's almost destined to fail these days unless everybody goes and sees it. So, the theater industry, right? Like the ticket prices just keep going up and up and up, and it keeps people away from the movies, but that's because of the business model of the movies. And streaming and home viewing has shifted, that people are just happier to wait to see it at home, which chips away at what the movie-going experience really is seeing in a theater with a whole bunch of people and reacting at once and feeling that movie at once or enjoying it. I don't think I've ever really been in a packed movie theater where people were visibly not enjoying themselves. Like, I think you're caught up in the moment, and sure, there's some time for reflection, but the point of what he was saying is like, people work so hard on every front that own these businesses, that run these businesses, that are part of these businesses, that are part of these industries, that there's no time to enjoy anything anymore. Like, and so what really hit me about this is there's a piece of what I do too, where I'm lucky that I can enjoy what I do for a living, because I do what I love, but it leaves me with no time. It leaves me with no time to do anything else that I enjoy. And that's kind of what what's her name? Io Edibiri. I think that's how you say her name. Says like, he's like, when's the last time you went and saw a play? She's like, I don't remember the last time I did anything that wasn't in the inside of a kitchen, because she's working so hard. She's working 80 hours a week. And obviously it's a fictional TV show, but it's based off a very real industry and a very real lifestyle of being part of a small business that you're working so hard to make successful that you have no time to do anything else. And I think that's one of the reasons too that we're faced with declining, let's just say sales, for example, of music and live shows and movie theaters and restaurants closing, is because everybody's kind of caught in this rat race. In the world of like a business that brings enjoyment. I'm not talking about corporations. Like, if you have a corporate job, and look, I worked corporate for a long time too, but you have a corporate job, like you leave, things still go. Like, that ball keeps rolling. You come back in, you do your job. And, there's a lot of people that work way too much at their corporate job. I have a couple of friends that are like that, but that thing is going to sink or swim without you. If they replace you, then replace you. Like, it's a different story when you're in a band. Like the lead singer leaves, and maybe if it's a big band, it keeps going, and maybe it's lucky enough to get a singer that works. But if you're a small band, that's the end of it. And so it's capitalism, right? It's capitalism that destroys everything. Because if you have a successful business, let's say a restaurant, and everybody's, operating at full capacity, 100%, things are going great, but everybody still has to get paid. And then all of a sudden, the landlord decides to raise its rent, your rent. And all of a sudden the city says, well, this is not zoned for that, or, whatever it is. It's just, it feels like that point illustrated so much of what we've seen in the last 15 years and the things that we love and the people that bring them for enjoyment. I often think about some of my musician friends in the past who stopped going to live shows because it's just like, I don't have time, and I don't enjoy it, because if that's the only thing I'm doing with my free time, then it's got to be the best show I've ever been to, or whatever. So it just got me thinking in general about how hard we work these days as people, whatever it is we're doing. And, I'm not trying to take away from the 40-hour work week people who, have a salary or an hourly job. Like, you guys and gals work so fucking hard. I mean, I have friends that are teachers, and they sure as hell don't make anywhere near what they should be making, and they barely even make enough to live a comfortable life. And I come from, a family with one parent that was a teacher, but it was, my mom retired in 2004. Like, she retired before things got really bad in the education system. They were starting to decline, but they've gotten so much worse. But, I have a friend, he's somebody that I've been friendly with. I wouldn't say he's like a close friend, but a friend that owns a coffee shop, a very successful coffee shop in Seattle called Porchlight Coffee and Records. And it's a coffee and record shop. It's kind of the dream. And Zach started it 16 years ago, and I met him, I think it was like the 6th birthday or 5th birthday of the coffee shop that they celebrated the summer, my first summer in Seattle. And, he had, I think, 2 employees, maybe 3 at one point, but it's like he works so hard on that and keeping that and building that up. But also he's a designer, and he does freelance design work, and he's very successful in that, and the record shop, and, it's all this stuff. But it's like, what he brings so much enjoyment to so many people's lives in Seattle, but it's like, it took him a long time before he could step away and take vacations and stuff, because he was also a photographer, so he would document that stuff. And it's just like a no-win situation these days if you want to open up a small business that employs people, is successful, brings joy to people, but also like gives you time to enjoy things yourself. And I feel like maybe I've gotten away from the point a little bit. And maybe it's just going to be me doing that today. But I, I just think about all the great restaurants that I really grew to love after moving to Seattle, that most of them don't exist anymore. And, the comic stores that we all enjoyed as kids that aren't around anymore. Now, obviously, that's part of, the times that became what the speculator boom was, and, the gluttonous 90s that led to the collapse. But still, comic stores started closing again. And then obviously COVID hit, and it's, if you couldn't pivot, you weren't going to survive. And, those stores that did pivot really got to be super successful. But even successful businesses fail these days, small businesses, because there's just so much crushing weight on top of you. And The Bear obviously illustrates that so much. Like I said, it's fiction, but it definitely reflects an industry that is not fiction. And, do you take time to enjoy things if you work 60 hours a week doing your thing? I mean, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to really enjoy what I do, to the molecular level of like, oh, cool, I get to, here we go. I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend, I purchased a piece of a comic collection, which actually all the stuff that's kind of on the back wall here is from that collection. And it was via a friend who bought it. He paid a lot for it and he needed to recoup some of his money. But, it entailed me taking my Saturday, driving 3 hours out to the middle of Washington, spending about 6 hours there, driving 3 hours back. And then yesterday, spending another couple hours going through it and bagging and boarding it and like assessing condition. But at that same time, I'm sitting here with a podcast on that I really like, background noise, looking through comics, some of them that I've never seen before, discovering things inside comics, like a lot of underground Robert Crumb stuff. And I found a Bernie Wrightson thing that was illustrated under a different pen name. And so at the same time, I'm learning and I'm enjoying, but it's still work and it's still my weekend. And it's still something that I do. I probably work every day of the week. And I know I need to take time to do other things, but my justification behind it is really thinking about how I spent my time from, let's say, 20 to the age of about 35, fucking off and doing what I wanted, being irresponsible with money and enjoying it. I spent a portion of my life going to wrestling pay-per-views around the country, a couple of SummerSlams, a couple of WrestleManias, like on my own dime, and just kind of like throwing away my responsibility to anything else or building any type of nest egg, which is fine because I'm still here and I'm still good. But also, I think about all the concerts that I went to, and like I wouldn't trade that for anything. I spoke about it on this podcast before. I've seen Pearl Jam 40 times. I've seen Nine Inch Nails definitely over 20 times, and a handful of other bands that I could say I've seen into the multiple digits. And that's great. But being, self-employed at the age of 45, running a business that depends on me and me only, there's nobody else that's going to do this. I think it's okay for me to hunker down and just say, this is my life. Like my job is my life. And I'm not, I can step away this week as of tonight. I have to go to the airport at 2:00 in the morning to pick my oldest friend up, whose flight got very delayed. And I'm going to spend 4.5 days hanging out with him. And I'm not doing any work this week. I just have to upload a video and upload this podcast. And that's really it. And it's nice to be able to say like, hey, I'm allowed to do that to myself. Tell your boss I'm taking the week off. Well, I'm looking at him. And that's a piece of freedom that, if this doesn't last, if I go back and I like everything crumbles and, in 2 years, I have to go back to the working world, I will think back to these, years of saying I did it. And, if I go back to the working world, it means that I have to use my time off to do the things I want to do. But right now, I get to take the time off and I don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills because the business is running the way that I've constructed it. I mean, I am a creature of habit, but there are so many people out there. I probably hazard 95% of the people out there of the working class don't get that luxury. They don't. And, I have friends that work different jobs and freelance and they work job to job. And some of them I actually employ, which is, God, that makes me feel so fulfilled too, to hire somebody and say, hey, this is what I want you to do, Dan. My editor, and we're still learning each other's nuances, but hey, you guys are watching the podcast. You see how it looks and how it sounds. And it's, I think that's really like somebody in this fucking stupid ass internet accused me of being a capitalist once. And I'm like, okay, but how are we going to say, how are we going to use the word capitalist? If you're going to generalize anybody that makes money doing something, a capitalist, sure. But when I think about being a capitalist, I think about exploitation, and I think about how capitalism exploits everybody from the working class to the consumer, and everything in between. And the top is what gets all the money, and the bottom gets absolutely nothing. Okay, I exploit myself. So it really does make me feel good to be able to hire somebody and employ them and pay them and do it in a way that like the person I'm paying is happy and what I'm getting is happy, because that's exactly what a service should be, right? It shouldn't be what the internet companies do to us or StreamYard, where it's like, I pay you because it's the only choice I have, and you fuck me as hard as you can, and don't even give me a breath mint in the morning. Fucking no breath mint. But you don't cook me breakfast in the morning, okay, CenturyLink. But I think I was talking to, who the hell was I talking to? I was talking to somebody this weekend about, I wish we could kind of go back to the days where bartering was a heavy way to do business with somebody. Like, I'll put this out to anybody in my audience, but if you're a professional framer, and you do framing of artwork, and you ever want to make a trade for comics for framing, I'm your guy. I think it's really crazy with the frame industry. It's very much like the eyeglass industry. It's anything specialty. It's very expensive because not everybody can do it, which I understand. But I also work behind the scenes on the framing industry when I work for the sports memorabilia job. And I know what the cost is on that stuff. And I'm not talking about like high-end museum or gallery frame. I'm just talking about like your simple, double matted, plexi UV frame. I know how much the cost of that is. I'm just saying I would do the barter. But it's interesting that kind of went away. Obviously it went away a long time ago, but there are people that do it. And this person who works with a friend of mine, they do graphics and signs and stuff like that. And he was telling me like he trades it to local businesses for whatever it is that they do, if it's something he's interested in. And that's great. I would do it too. You've got some service or whatever that I need, and you want certain comics, let's do it. It works out for everybody. And anyway, I got away from what I was saying about, enjoying and all this. This is a weird one. This is one that I'm going to get meta with this. I'm going to tell you the inside baseball of this. I'm just recording this because I knew I wanted to talk, but I wasn't 100% sure where I wanted to go. And that quote, I saved it on my computer. And I think there's just so much, I talk with my buddy Scott a lot about the concerts and stuff and what we used to do and how we used to go, and like COVID, how COVID like really, it's like every business took advantage of COVID. Every single corporation and mega business took advantage of COVID. How? They saw that, cost of things were going up. So they just jacked it all the way up. And when COVID kind of subsided, that floor was what the ceiling was. And the music industry is so fucking guilty with that. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the news right now about Ticketmaster and Live Nation. And, we've all known it's a monopoly for years and years and years. And Ticketmaster is the worst. Live Nation's just as bad, and I guess they're one company now or some shit. But Pearl Jam fought them. Taylor Swift tried to fight them. Robert Smith fought them, and actually he was one of the very few people that was able to do away with the dynamic pricing. But Liam Finn and Crowded House, if you listen to my interview with him, they were also able to push Live Nation to refund all of the people on that New Zealand tour during COVID for the dynamic pricing. What we talked about in what me and Scott talk about is just how, like, we talk about even seeing some of these bands, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, how it'd be like, oh, $60 for a ticket, that's high, but whatever, I'll go, we didn't really hesitate. But now those same bands are doing bigger tours. And by bigger, I mean they're playing bigger stadiums because the music industry is in a terrible hole, and the touring industry is in a terrible hole for musicians because they have to give so much money to Live Nation or Ticketmaster or whatever. And so they're forced, I don't know if they're being forced or if it's just kind of like that's the way things are going of these bands. They would play, like hockey arenas, whatever that is, 25, 28,000. And now they're playing stadiums, which are double. And generally, from my recollection, I didn't go to a ton of stadium shows, but stadium shows were cheaper. That's usually how it worked. It's like, if you're packing 65 or 55,000 people in a stadium, the ticket prices are a little bit lower because everybody's view is kind of a little bit shittier unless you're really close. And it's just not the same experience. And so a lot of these bands are just playing these shows, and then like tickets are like $200 face value and the dynamic ticket pricing. And it makes me not want to go to shows, not because I don't want to support the band, but I don't want to support the machine. And that's just one of the industries that, like, everything went haywire after COVID and it never came back. And so I think we're a little bit less inclined to go to shows now, and which means you're not going to enjoy the things you used to enjoy because you either don't have the time or you don't have the money because you have to spend more time making that money to afford to go to the thing. And I don't see it ever going back, and unless something revolutionary happens. And like I said, with the movie industry, I think they're pumping out more shit because they're trying to make more money, and they're trying to make more money because there's no money being made because these movies are all kind of flopping or they're not making a ton of money. And so it's just a cycle that's going to perpetuate itself until something breaks that cycle. I stopped collecting records because I saw what I saw in the comic industry really happen in the record world, the vinyl world, over, kind of like not while COVID started, but it was like kind of on the peak to the downturn where I think a lot of these record labels, companies, whatever, saw how many people were just buying records because they were home and they had money. And so like, oh, fuck it, let's just pump out more color variants because these people will collect anything. And sure, you can blame yourself if you're the collector for having obsessive tastes, but the other thing is it's just they're funneling it in. They're making it like, oh, you need this. And it's tough. Like, taking advantage of collectors is a very easy thing. We've all been there. And with comics, we've been there. With records, we've been there. It's happening with DVDs and Blu-rays now because streaming killed physical media. So all these boutique DVD or Blu-ray makers are putting out versions of movies, and a lot of them are really cool with extra stuff that's never been seen before, but a lot of it's just repackaged shit that you probably already own. And it's just, once something becomes a trend or it becomes a little bit popular in the collecting space, It gets exploited eventually by some or multiple people. And it makes me pull away. I try not to exploit my customers. I try to keep my prices low so that nobody feels like they're paying top dollar. They're always happy to come back. I'll tell people outright, if I charge less for the stuff that I sell, you're going to come back and buy more from me. That's exactly how it works. And that's how it should work. You are happy with something, you're not spending all your money on it, you're going to come back and buy more. And then if you get out of collecting, that's cool. Like, I completely understand. I've watched people come and go. I still enjoy doing it. I still enjoy bringing people books. I still enjoy reading comics, collecting comics, talking about them, and looking through them and appreciating the art. I still enjoy music. Do I buy records anymore? Not really. That's why you saw the rise of Bandcamp, because Bandcamp is for the artists. And during COVID, they started doing these Fridays where they weren't taking any fees. And you could just digitally download an album from a band and buy it. And the band would get all the money for it. But then it became a thing where it's like, well, now they're asking me to double dip. They want me to buy the vinyl, but if I want to download, I have to pay for that. And that's where I'm out. I'm just out. Like, I get it. The struggles of a musician to make ends meet, but you shouldn't ask me to double dip. If I buy a record, especially directly from you or a small label, you should be giving me a download of that. I'm not harming anything by owning that album digitally and on a physical, but you're telling me that I need to buy both if I want both, which is bullshit, because that's never how music worked since I was a kid. You buy a record, you could put it on a tape. You buy a CD, you could put it on a tape. You buy, and then we buy a CD, you could rip it onto your computer. Did I say CD to tape? Vinyl to tape, CD to computer. You could probably figure out some other ways. But then it was when vinyl came back. Buy the vinyl, get the digital download. Now it's buy the vinyl. Sometimes that quality's garbage and you don't get shit. Sometimes you don't even get liner notes. And now it's buy the vinyl and then stream the album. Also, I'm a big sound quality audiophile guy. Not like super, I need the best headphones in my amp and all that stuff. I'm not like that. But when you listen to something on Spotify, and then you like listen to it on a vinyl or you listen to it on a CD, like Spotify sounds like trash. When you download even the MP3 on your iPhone in a stereo, sounds better than Spotify's garbage. And it's just such a convoluted mess that everything's turned into, and it leads to less enjoyment. Look, I sound like I'm not enjoying music anymore. I love music. I listen to music all the time, all day, probably 4 or 5 hours a day I'm listening to music. But I just don't like the way things have gone in that aspect. Even, and I never did it because I don't really like reading comics digitally. I'm not against it. I did it for a while on an iPad, but even Marvel DC, I think they still do the digital download codes, or Marvel did it for years, where you peel off the sticker and you could download the comic or read it on your tablet or whatever. Like, that's the way to do it. If you give people a secondary way to listen to something and they don't have to pay for it, chances are they're going to come back and spend more money. It's a kind of a simple thing. You give somebody you give more than what they're used to getting, or you give them something extra, and it's going to stick in your brain, and it's going to be like, yeah, of course I want to go back and buy this, or I want to, patron this business again. It's the same thing with a restaurant. If the quality of the food's good, you like it, right? That's your baseline for enjoying a meal, is to enjoy the meal. But if the service is great, or they're a little extra, like do something extra, like, they give you some cookies, or they give you a free little dessert tester, you're going to go back. I mean, it's so easy. Like, it's such an easy equation. I know not everything is as easy as that when it comes to money and like costs of stuff, but the little things add up to more success. It really does. It's like with their local comic store. If you go to a comic store every Wednesday and the store owner's great, or he he's like, here, I'll give you a great example of something that my LCS owner did. Damien, there was the week that the new Joe Quesada Black Panther book came out. I was like, oh, how is it? He's like, yeah, I enjoyed it, whatever we were talking about. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll pick it up and trade. And then he was like, you know what? We had a couple of damaged copies that I was going to send back. He's like, I'll just give you one. And he gave it to me and I read it and I liked it. And I'm going to buy issue 2 this week. It's just those little things. If I can do that with somebody, throw an extra comic in and they appreciate that, maybe they'll think of me next time they want to buy something as a gift for somebody else. I don't know. It's just so with the music industry, if they went back to doing certain things that don't really lose money and they incentivize people to spend more money, I don't think the problems would be as prevalent as they are. Because not for every Taylor Swift out there, there's 10,000 people struggling to make ends meet, or small bands on small labels that have a home. That's one of the things that bugs me out about this. Trying to get certain people on this podcast. It's like I am reaching for some big names in the movie industry. The comic industry, there's still some names I'd love to have on that I haven't gotten. But the music industry, it's like, it's so fractured and broken, and there's no, like, not everybody reads Rolling Stone. Nobody goes like to websites anymore for music news like they used to. Like, can't tell you the last time I looked at Consequence of Sound, ever since they started doing these crazy pop-up ads and Pitchfork and stuff. Why wouldn't you want to come and talk about your music on a podcast? Even if it reaches one new person, that's one person that didn't know your music yesterday. That's one person that might stream your music. It's one person that might go see your show. Little by little. I mean, it's how the DIY scenes started. It's how some of these bands got huge in the, in whatever genre of music you want to point out. You would talk about the punk, punk was word of mouth for shows and fanzines, and rap was mixtapes and live performances. Like, there's so many people that have gotten these huge careers that started just by talking about their music and getting it out there. Anywho, the quote at the beginning was just kind of like needed to, I wanted everybody to hear that, to think about that. I'll play it again right now and then we'll get out of here. But Dano, hit it.
When's the last time you saw a play, huh?
Well, to be fair, the last time I saw anything, it looked like the inside of a restaurant.
My point exactly. There's no time for enjoyment.
All right, friends. Thank you for listening to me rant about this. But I think this is a good companion to last week's episode about trying things and, how I'm feeling about the industries that support these things. I think that this space here is one of these spaces that I would like to be able to bring you something that maybe you didn't know you didn't know about and you enjoy now. And look, I know not too many people are going to throw this in the comment section, but 65 episodes into this podcast, I'd love to hear from you, my listener. One thing that I opened my mouth about that you didn't know about, you didn't listen to, you didn't read, whatever, that you said, yeah, I'm going to try this, and you tried it, whether you liked it or not. Like, if you told me you listened to Liam Finn's new album, Hyperverse, and it wasn't your thing, let me hear from you, because honestly, at the root of this podcast is I want to be able to introduce my listeners, my friends, my community into something new. And I'll give you most recently, I think, an album that you probably have heard about if you're into newer music, but really, really enjoying the new Turnstile album, which is called Never Enough. They're a hardcore punk band that it's been around over 10 years now, because I saw them live a couple of times about 8 years ago now. And they made this great album called Never Enough, and it's all over the place. I'm hearing it in a lot of different places, and they got a high energy live show, and this album really does set an example with that. So yeah, check it out if you haven't heard it yet. I appreciate you for listening to this podcast and supporting it. If you can rate it on Spotify or Apple, leave a comment, whatever it is you can help, drop a like or comment on YouTube, subscribe to it somewhere else. It would mean the world to me. And we're on the way to almost 1,000 subscribers. So this has been another episode of Direct Edition. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.